The Russians had barely recovered from the downing of A-50 and Il-22 aircraft when another plane was destroyed over Belgrade. This story raised more questions than answers, but let's try to lay out the information that is known and figure out what exactly happened. I'm Maria Drutska, and today we will talk about lie spread by Russia about the downed military aircraft Il-76. Let's start from the beginning for those who haven't been following the developments of this event. I have gathered and analyzed all the material for you, so listen to the end. A Russian military transport plane, Il-76, crashed in the village of Yablonova in the Belgorod region of Russia. Яблонова. It's funny. Але як їм поясню, що це значить, мабуть, ніяк не поясню. Ну да. Almost immediately, the Russian Federation's Ministry of Attack claimed that the plane was carrying 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war for exchange. Here is my small subjective opinion. The Ukrainian side didn't work fast enough in the field of communications. Well, yes, guys, I will not always say everything is good with us and everything is perfect. Therefore, this is an example of how not to conduct communications, unfortunately, especially during the war, especially when the situation is so tense and requires the quickest response. There was no reaction or official position from the Ukrainian side for a long time, and during this time, unfortunately, Russian propaganda and lies began to spread at an extraordinary speed. Traces in the sky separate from the plane indicate that the aircraft was shot down. Later, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine indirectly commented on the crash of the Russian military transport aircraft Il-76. They noted that the military always takes measures to protect Ukraine and Ukrainians, and the occupiers' inability to achieve results on the battlefields leads to an intensification of shelling and missile attacks on civilian infrastructure and the population, particularly in Kharkiv. The armed forces of Ukraine will continue to take measures to destroy the means of delivery, control the airspace for the destruction of the terrorist threat, including on the Belgorod-Kharkiv direction, the armed forces of Ukraine added. In order to reduce the missile threat, the armed forces of Ukraine not only control the airspace, but also closely monitor the launch points of missiles and their logistics, especially with the use of military transport aviation, the message stated. The Russians began to shout from all tribunes and say that it was Ukraine that shot down the Il-76. The main intelligence directorate of Ukraine confirmed that a prisoner exchange had been planned for January 24th, which did not take place. However, intelligence does not have reliable information regarding who was on board the crashed plane. In the day following the incident, Russian media or official bodies did not provide photos of video evidence at such a number of bodies in the area of the crash. There is also no evidence of when and how the Ukrainian prisoners could have gotten on board. On the Il-76 aircraft that crashed in the Belgorod region of Russia, Russian officials were supposed to fly, but at the last moment the FSB prohibited them from boarding. At the same time, after the crash, only 5 bodies were delivered to the Belgorod morgue, which likely confirms the absence of dozens of prisoners on the plane. This was stated by the representative of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Andriy Yusov. In fact, this number corresponds to the number of the crew of the Il-76, the same aircraft that was part of the Russian airspace forces, he added. Yusuf said that the FSB did not allow Russian rescuers to inspect the crash site. He also said that the Russian side could have used Ukrainian prisoners of war as human shields for transporting ammunition and weapons for missile systems. The aircraft could have been carrying missiles for the S-300 system, as well as simultaneously missiles and people. We are talking about a large military aircraft. It was only 1/3 loaded, according to their words. Was there a point in using this particular aircraft? Also, simultaneously with it, there were other planes, An-26 and An-72 in the space near Il, which experienced the crash. Many circumstances require investigation and maximum study, what was explained. He reminded that according to international law, it is the state that holds prisoners of war that is responsible for their safety, including transportation for exchange. The list of prisoners of war was made public by the head of Russia Today, Margarita Simonyan, supposedly. However, it has later became known that the name of at least one prisoner from this list coincides with the data of a Ukrainian who had already been exchanged earlier. Commander of the Air Forces of Ukraine Mykola Oleshchuk believes that Russia deliberately spread fake information about this catastrophe to influence the international audience. The goal is obviously they want to reduce international support for our state, he said. Later, President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the Russians play with the lives of Ukrainian prisoners, the feelings of their relatives, and the emotions of our society. According to him, Kyiv will insist on conducting an international investigation into the plane crash. Of course, it's a good idea that our president stated this, but we understand that Russia will never allow independent international experts to the crash site. Why? Because it's full of lies and shit. Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that Russia agrees to an international investigation of the Il-76 crash near Belgorod, but only if it considered as a crime of the Ukrainian government. If he, Zelensky, means an international investigation into the criminal actions of the Kiev regime, it is definitely needed, Peskov said. He couldn't answer why Ukraine would deliberately shot down a plane with its own soldiers. But anyway, Russian officials made unsustained claims that Ukraine shot down the Il-76 with American or German missile systems, presumably in an attempt to dissuade Ukraine's Western partners from providing important air defense systems to Ukraine. Putin said today that under no circumstances could it have been friendly fire. Our air defense systems cannot strike our own aircraft by definition. They are friend or foe systems, and no matter how much the operator pressed the button, our air defense system would not have worked. How to tell you about this? You ask for it, Vlad. Here you go. On February 24, 2022, on the first day of the full-scale invasion, Russian air defense shot down a Russian military transport aircraft An-26 in the Voronezh region. In total, during the war, more than 10 instances of Russian air defense destroying their own aircraft and helicopters were recorded. On July 18, 2023, over the occupied Alchevsk in the Luhansk region, a video captured the moment of the destruction of a Russian Su-34 aircraft by Russian air defense. In September 2023, a Su-35 was shot down by Russian air defense over Tokmak in the Zaporizhia region. In December 2023, the Russian army shot down another Su-25 attack aircraft in the Mykolaiv region. Even when on January 14, 2024, a Russian A-50 aircraft, a flying radar based on the Il-76, was shot down over the Azov Sea, about 150 kilometers from the front lines. Most Russian media claim that the aircraft was shot down by Russian air defense, and Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that Ukraine was not involved in the destruction of the A-50. But Putin still believes in the best invincible Russian technologies. Let's move on. The Russians said that the fragments of bodies found during the inspection of the crash site have characteristic tattoos. Such symbols have been recorded on the bodies of many representatives of Ukrainian armed formations, including the Azov regiment banned in Russia, they said. Among the physical evidence already attached to the criminal case materials, there are documents of the deceased Ukrainian servicemen confirming their identities, said publication. There were videos that were blurred and they saw a tattoo of the Ukrainian trident. And it's interesting that documents there were too. And first of all, completely undamaged foreign passport. Apparently the soldier wanted to go to the seashore on the island, so he took his passport for traveling abroad. In another so-called document, it was written Ryadovy, kind of soldier but another meaning, and there is no position of that, it's only soldier now. But the another one was used a long time ago. Russian channels are now spreading a new video on the social media. Supposedly, footage of Ukrainian prisoners of war boarding the plane has been published. Only there is some inconsistency here. Did the Russians wait a whole 3 days to show this video? Why not immediately? And where is the filming date and the location of this filming? Where were they located, which city the plane was, and honestly, look closer. Do you see 65 soldiers there? I don't see. The question remains, where are bodies of the 65 soldiers? As we can see, friends, every hour there are some new details coming out, but let's wait. And I remind you that every piece of information you should be independently analyzed and sought over. Maybe someone is lying to you. And let me know, guys, in the comments below, what do you think actually happened with Il-76? And I will update you when more details are coming. Follow me on my Twitter, Instagram, like this video, and subscribe to my channel. And I want to thank all of you who support Ukraine, watch Ukrainian content, and if you like the video, you can support this channel on Patreon or buy me a coffee. And see you soon. Slava Ukraini!